Hideo Kojima poured his heart into Metal Gear Solid 2, confident that his message would reach players worldwide. But when the game was finally released, it became clear to Kojima that fans were more upset than enlightened. As a result, Kojima slipped into a deep depression. Despite his best efforts, players still demanded that they have their Solid Snake fantasy, and they criticized MGS2 for undermining that fantasy at every turn. Raiden, of course, was criticized for being the antithesis of Solid Snake, a flamboyant noob, unlike the heroic badass they wanted to play as. But while Raiden received the loudest criticism, it was Rose who received the most viciously stupid criticism.
She's a pointless character, but at least she has nice jugs.
Bitch needs to go to the kitchen, am I right? Huh?
I want to kill people and fight Metal Gears, not get a morality check.
And so, Kojima made Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Snake was the protagonist again, kind of, and the story, while still conveying an important message, was more simple and straightforward, and the female characters went back to being based on Kojima's unrealistic fantasies of women.
The name's Eva.
Kojima intended Snake Eater to end the series, but players continued to demand explanations for things in MGS2 that Kojima never intended to explain. Thus, Kojima started working on Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. But as Kojima worked on the game, he continued to lament how it seemed that neither players, nor his team, understood the message he worked so hard to convey in MGS2. Did he communicate his message well enough? If so, why weren't fans receptive to his message? Why didn't they, like Raiden, learn to shake off society's mimetic determinism and find their own identities? It was these thoughts that led Kojima to come up with a theme for MGS4, sense. A person's will, thoughts, and emotions, not encoded in genes, memes, or the scene of the times. According to Kojima, the reason fans didn't get MGS2's message is because they misunderstood what Metal Gear is really about. They didn't understand the sense of Metal Gear. Again, we must never forget that Kojima's games are an extension of his sense, his will, thoughts, and emotions. He projects his own feelings into his work. So, taking all of this into account, how did Kojima's depression over his failure to pass down MGS2's message influence MGS4? When Raiden was reintroduced in MGS4 as a cyborg ninja, fan opinion made a 180-degree turn. Now, everyone loves Raiden.
Drifthead, you never went back to see Rose. Rose? She doesn't exist. No. Rose and I live in different worlds, different times. Her world has no place for someone like me.
Leaving Rose behind, Raiden now does awesome things like backflips, cutting down geckos like butter, and he has fights with Vamp with subtle gay undertones. Raiden is now the badass players wanted to play as in MGS2. Meanwhile, Rose was assigned a Snake's psychological counselor. Many have criticized Rose's role as a codec contact due to her mundane conversations about how to maintain Snake's psyche. But in truth, there are actually many interesting conversations with Rose. The problem is that most of them only occur if the player has a low psyche. A few other interesting convos only occur at very specific moments in the game, like during the bike chase with Eva, or after the Crying Wolf battle. Otherwise, the player only gets the mundane conversations that people complain about. As a whole, Rose's personality seems downplayed. In MGS2, she had an attitude. She called Raiden out on his shit, she stood up for herself, and she was even brutally funny.
What? I can't believe this. What are you wearing?
Well, it's a disguise.
A disguise? What kind of disguise?
Well, I was hoping I could use it kind of like camouflage. You know, fool the enemy into thinking I was a box.
You'd have to be an absolute idiot to be fooled by that.
Yeah, maybe. But there are more idiots in this world than you think.
You mean like you?
What?
Never mind. Anyway, good luck. You'll probably need it with that stupid box on your head.
But of course, people hated that. So, in MGS4, there really isn't a whole lot going on with Rose. She's all sweetness and light, and can't even figure out that she's the butt of a joke.
Some of the best food I'd ever tasted, Rose.
I'm sorry, Snake. Ever since he went to that swap meet, it's all he can talk about. You think he'd never had a decent meal in his life.
No kidding. Wait a minute. Rose, who does the cooking at your house?
Me. Roy doesn't... What are you getting at?
Nothing. Never mind. Colonel, my sympathies.
It's appreciated, Snake.
I actually like those American rations.
It's like, in MGS2, she was an annoying, evil bitch. But in MGS4, she became a boring, harmless bitch. Likewise, Raiden's growth into a cool character was actually a superficial improvement. In reality, it was a regression in disguise. At the end of MGS2, Snake teaches Raiden to choose his own life. But in MGS4, Raiden continues to live a life of despair.
It was never going to work out for me. It even rained the day I was born. I have nothing.
Raiden became cool at the expense of his humanity and free will. Raiden may claim that his place is on the battlefield, but it's clear that war only makes Raiden miserable.
I have always been alone.
In MGS4, we see that Raiden wants to protect Snake. He, like in the end of MGS2, tried to follow in Snake's footsteps.
I'll release you. It's the only way I'll ever be free.
But Snake, once again, refuses and tries to get Raiden to live his own life.
I'm a shadow, one that no light will shine on. As long as you follow me, you'll never see the day. Raiden, 5 years ago, that's not what I meant.
Snake's words came directly from Hideo Kojima's mouth, speaking in regards to how most players misunderstood MGS2's message. But like Snake with Raiden, Kojima wasn't ready to give up on trying to pass down his message just yet. Kojima had Snake fight even harder to reiterate the message he tried to convey in Sons of Liberty.
Your body may be a machine, but your heart is human. You've got a life to go back to.
I've got nothing to lose.
Don't be an idiot. You know you've got someone to protect. You still have your youth. Don't waste it. You can start over.
Notice how Snake continues to remind Raiden of Rose. Just like in MGS2's ending, Snake implores Raiden to find his own identity. And Snake understands that the only way that that can happen is if Raiden gets away from the battlefield and returns to his family. And by the game's end, Raiden does get his wish, albeit in a way no one ever expected. Many fans have criticized Rose for marrying Campbell while Raiden was clearly in distress.
I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I needed to get over it. To move on with my life.
However, this is revealed to be nothing more than a red herring. As it turns out, Rose only married Campbell in order to protect their son.
Roy pretended to be my husband. To protect me. And our son. Only until you completed your mission. To shield us from Patriot eyes.
All this time, when we thought Rose was harmless and boring, she was actually pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, yet again. Still, one can argue that she hurt him deeply with her lies. I mean, on top of all the lying and manipulating she's been doing in their relationship, she even lied to Raiden about her miscarriage. How could she be so sure that he'd return to her after all the pain her lies caused him? Well, maybe she wasn't sure. And if she wasn't, then that makes her sacrifice all the more noble, because she would have done it knowing that her temporary loss might end up a permanent one. If she was sure, then that just proves that she trusted Raiden to follow his heart back home. And it was clear throughout the game that Raiden never forgot about her. Even though Raiden claimed Rose doesn't exist in his world, as the Arsenal Gear scene shows, his heart yearned for Rose all along.
Jack, do you remember the day we met?
Yeah, it was in front of Federal Hall. There were all these tourists around you.
Despite not being with Rose for 5 years, Raiden spends what could be his final moments thinking about her. It's only when Raiden isn't doing the awesome things that the fanboys praise him for that Raiden is truly happy. At last, Raiden asserts his independence from player demands and finds his own name and his own life. And Kojima hoped that both fans and his team would finally understand the sense of Metal Gear's message. Sadly, most players were still clueless. When the fanboys saw Raiden in MGS4, they didn't see a lost soul tortured by war. They saw a badass who they wanted to control for themselves. At most, the scenes where Raiden shows misery from the battlefield is seen as an annoyance, that he's a whining emo faggot and should go back to breakdancing with Vamp. People criticized this scene because it showed that Raiden still had his humanity. But they don't want Raiden to have humanity. They want him to be a vector to fulfill their childish power fantasies. And unfortunately, years later, Kojima would reluctantly grant them their wish.
Earth,